Okay, we are going to get started in a minute as you settle down. Did Catherine do a good job organizing lunch? Yes, thank you, Catherine. And in my thank yous to begin with this morning, I don't think I gave enough credit to the IIR team for pulling together the logistics here. Catherine, and we've got several of our graduate students, Sandeep, our new postdoc, and of course Michelle, who is to talk to you about refugee data and policy. And so this morning we were talking a lot about the humanitarian goals of refugee resettlement. And we heard sort of stirring stories about experiences people have had, and then also from the people, the frontline workers, who are helping in the resettlement process. And so now we're going to sort of switch gears a little bit and talk about how Americans, native-born Americans, this generation of native-born Americans, that we benefit from the refugees and immigrants who come here. And that's an important part of what we're going to talk about in the afternoon. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the need for STEM employment, the need for STEM workers, and how those two things can come together. So it's not just a humanitarian argument, but also an economic argument. And I think that's important. You know, we heard about in past days of bipartisanship, it was easier to get things done in this space. And so now, as we think about, it's not so bipartisan, it's fairly polarized, we could say, but if there are different ways people can think about why we should welcome refugees and immigrants, that this is the opportunity to do it right now. And so I'm going to begin by having Michelle Schweitz, introduce Mason's Vice President for Research, Andre Marshall.
Should I go to the podium?
Yeah, wherever you're comfortable.
Okay.
Comfort is our rule today, and productivity.
Thank you so much, Jim. It is my great pleasure to be here today and to welcome you to the lunch that will feature remarks from Dr. Andre Marshall, Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Impact at George Mason University, and Lucretia Keenan, Strategist for the Community Sponsorship Hub at the Welcome Corps. That will be followed by a short Q&A with Colleen Tai, a Program Officer at the State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. Before the speakers take the podium, I'd like to thank the Institute for Immigration Research, the Oak Ridge Associated Universities, and the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority for their vision and hard work in bringing together today's conference at Mason. I'd also like to thank all conference presenters and participants for being here today, and also for all the good work that will come about as the result of your work today. In the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, which is my academic home, we embrace and contribute to STEM through work in the cognitive and behavioral sciences, the social sciences, and computational fields such as linguistics, data analytics and machine learning, and the digital humanities. We are also a college dedicated to the humanities and to advancing humanistic understanding of the value and diversity of cultures, languages, and ways of being. We do all of this within the context of preparing our students to productively engage in as global citizens. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Andre Marshall, Vice President for Research and Faculty in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Andre joined Mason in 2021 from the National Science Foundation, where he was Program Director for the Industry University Cooperative Research Center and Innovation Core programs. Prior to NSF, Dr. Marshall was faculty at the University of Maryland, College Park, in the Department of Fire Protection Engineering, where he founded the Fire Testing and Evaluation Center and launched a tech startup based on patented technology. Andre has been an innovator and a steadfast supporter of Mason's researchers, providing leadership and catalyzing opportunities on many fronts. His presence today is a prime example of how seriously he takes each opportunity to deepen relationships between university researchers and external partners, many of whom are here today. Andre, the floor is yours.
So thank you so much, Professor Schweitz. So I'm really proud to host this conference focused on Welcome Core and to see how STEM opportunities can address some of these urgent humanitarian needs and expand our STEM workforce. So I think I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just share a little bit of my experience with another core program, which is the Innovation Core program. So I had the pleasure actually of participating in a program run by the National Science Foundation that sought to drive commercialization and translation of technologies in the STEM areas through university researchers. And this was a core program. It was led by a federal agency, and a key focus of that program was really engaging researchers that may not otherwise be engaged and bringing them into the innovation community. And so I see some parallels there, and it was really a transformational program for me. But one of the kind of key aspects of the program was outreach. And when it came to certain participants in the program, it was really outreach and agency and letting those participants know that they are welcome. And in doing that, giving them the agency then to explore some of the program benefits. And so with this Welcome Core run by the Department of State, I really do love this idea of welcome and of being intentional with. I understand that there's a team around the participants to help them to integrate into the program. So this core program, federally supported program, I think is really fascinating to me, especially as it relates to leveraging our not only the urgent need of the immigrant population, but regionally our need for STEM talent. And in Northern Virginia at Mason, we just can't meet the demand of the STEM workforce. One of Mason's strengths is its size. So with our 40,000 students, even over 1,000 computing students graduating a year, still not sufficient to meet the demand. And that's in many ways, not always, but in many ways why Mason is kind of this crown jewel of Northern Virginia, because we are addressing a regional need that is, and we're addressing it, but we can't fulfill it. So I love this idea of tapping new capacity and embracing and welcoming that new capacity. For example, you all are familiar with Amazon HQ2. $1 billion was invested in the university system, $1 billion invested in the university system to drive more computing graduates out of our university. So this idea of training in the STEM fields for our welcome participants is outstanding. Also, you should know that this region, the broader National Capital Region, was just ranked a #3 biotech hub. So that is behind Silicon Valley and Boston. And so there are a lot of STEM opportunities here. And I just think this idea of promoting this program to address the urgent need that we have in STEM talent is going to be a winner. At Mason, now a transition. Yeah, we're great at STEM. Yes, we're large. We also are diversity and accessibility is a real strength of Mason, right? So we have over 130 countries represented in our student body, and it's no doubt that immigrants and refugees have an outsized impact on our students, our faculty, and our staff. And I just hate, but they feel welcome here, right? I feel welcome here. That's a strength of Mason, is really prioritizing access, prioritizing inclusivity, and driving meeting some of the STEM workforce demands. I do appreciate this intersectionality for the Welcome Corps, and I look forward to the discussion about how we can be intentional about that welcome. I think that is, I mentioned that at the very beginning, it's so important in order to help our participants to thrive. And Mason is a very nurturing, inclusive environment, and I do think this is a great institution in order to explore this wonderful program that the State Department has. With that, I think I'm going to conclude and welcome Lucretia Keenan, the strategist for the Community Sponsorship Hub of the Welcome Corps, to give a presentation on the program. Thank you.
I'm going to switch things up by staying in my seat,
Dealer's choice.
Thanks for the welcome. Thanks for hosting this, George Mason. Just want to give a shout out to Jim, Jawad, the rest of the student organization, and literally everyone I've talked to has been so incredibly welcoming, and such a great space to talk about this today. So just want to say that building on Andre's remarks, that I'm going to try to keep it short so we can get more time for questions, but the overview that we'll share today will answer some basics, but hopefully we'll get some of your questions out of the way at first and then get into the more nitty-gritty, more interesting questions. But we'll talk about what Welcome Corps is, how it works, to again borrow a phrase, how the program has been intentionally laid out to support refugees, and then how you, the organizations you represent, everyone watching, anyone in the United States, can get involved in the program. And apologies if I'm looking back, haven't done the in-person presentation since the pandemic started for a while. So Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans who are inspired to welcome refugees seeking safety and freedom. It's not only a benefit to the refugees, but importantly, as we'll talk about, there's a reciprocal benefit between those refugee newcomers who are supported, as well as those that take part and are leading the work from communities. It was launched in late January, and really the program aims to equip and empower Americans to directly get involved in the welcome of refugees across the United States. As touched on in previous presentations so far today, as many of you know, the vast majority of refugees are welcomed and resettled to the United States through the help of resettlement agencies located all across the country. The Welcome Corps serves as a complement to that complementary effort to that great work, and really helps to expand the capacity in a number of ways, which we'll talk about, directly involving Americans. So as many of you know, it's a public-private partnership. I'm joined with Colleen from the U.S. Department of State. And so in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services, the program was launched earlier this year. It's led by a consortium of partners, including the Community Sponsorship Hub, as well as a number of organizations that you may have heard of before: Church World Service, HIAS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, otherwise known as IRIS, International Refugee Assistance Project, IRC, or International Rescue Committee, and Welcome.us. You'll notice there are some very well-known resettlement actors, including HIAS, which I think is the oldest formally recognized resettlement actor. I think began welcoming in 1881. And then you'll notice some newer organizations on the block. That was very intentionally laid out to really bring a great diversity of experience and depth and perspective to this work. Before we jump into the more specifics about the program, because there has been so many new innovations around resettlement and particularly around sponsorship in the past couple of years, just want to make sure we're all on the same playing field and level set just a bit in terms of what terminology we're using. Don't want to get too wonky too quickly. So community sponsorship is when at large, those that have been forcibly displaced are connected with groups that can support their integration by committing to provide financial and/or in-kind contributions and volunteer services. So Welcome Corps is a type of community sponsorship, or technically it's known as private sponsorship. And you may have heard about private sponsorship in reading about the Canadian model or other pilots across the world. But it's not the only one. We'll dive deep on that today, but there are other types of sponsorships, such as Uniting for Ukraine program that Jawad mentioned earlier. That's a type of fiscal sponsorship. So just wanted to help place that this is one in the wider ecosystem of sponsorship opportunities that are available in the United States this time. So the goal of Welcome Corps is to help mobilize 10,000 Americans to welcome 5,000 refugees within year one. So shout out and call to action for everyone in the room / everyone watching that you can all be a part of this. It's important to note that due to some considerations around processing, such as that Kim and Salima mentioned earlier, and that happened, that those 5,000 refugees may not arrive in year one just because of consideration of processing, but really the aim is to engage that number of Americans and to help support and get things underway for that number of refugee newcomers. So to accomplish that goal, we need private sponsors. That's how the magic happens. The magic happens, as Han and others described, when community members get directly involved. So I'll lay out just a little bit of what a private sponsor group is and how the application process works. So it's a group of at least 5 adults who have to raise $23.75 per newcomer that they're being supported, and they commit to 90 days of supporting and providing certain services, as well as completing certain reports along the way and surveys to talk about their experience as they're walking through this process. So why is this cool? Not to get super gushy about it, but as Jawad mentioned, there was a program in the 1980s. It was similar, but didn't have all the bells and whistles that we have with Welcome Corps. And with this group, or with this program, it allows everyday Americans, they can be both permanent residents as well as US citizens. And any group of 5 Americans can say, I want to do this. I want to be a part of this, fill an application, which we'll talk about in a minute, and do that. Previously, this wasn't possible to the same degree. You had to be part of a recognized group. You had to work with a resettlement agency. That's still an amazing opportunity and one that should be had. But through this, it really opens it up even to more people, where it can really be any 5 group of people who are passionate about this and want to get involved. So to do that group of 5, and typically it's more than that, has to complete an application form. They have to pass a background check, training. They have to develop a welcome plan that really captures how they're going to be prepared before that refugee newcomer or family comes to the United States, and make sure that they're there to help them throughout their 90-day period in the fullest possible way. And then there's some other things in terms of code of conduct and other things you might expect with this type of experience. So the type of things they do are in line with the resettlement and placement, reception and placement, trying to not use too many acronyms here, services that refugee resettlement agencies do as well. And what makes this amazing is that this is what what resettlement agencies do, but also this is what everyone here has done in different ways throughout their life as well. All of these tasks we've done in our daily lives to varying degrees, and have welcomed people at the airport after a long journey, have helped find secure housing either on a temporary or permanent basis, have helped people know how to go to the DMV and stand in line to get their license, as exciting as that opportunity is. The sponsor group, and this is part of the model, does this together. They work as a group, both with that core group that signs up, but also it's a positive ripple effect. Inevitably, that group talks to their wider network. And what we've seen through data and monitoring so far in this program and other programs similar to it is that inevitably you're touching with at least 20 plus other members of your community, which is amazing. Like, you're directly involving others just naturally as a part of this, and it's involving a diverse group of people from the community. So when people sign up, when people raise their hand, take that brave step forward and say, I want to help do this, I want to be part of this movement, inevitably there's also the question there of like, who's going to be there? Who's going to walk alongside me as I take this step forward? So building on the best practices and the work that the resettlement agencies have been doing, as well as other programs that similar to this have been piloted around the world, there's a number of supports there to help set up that group for success. Recognizing we're not all resettlement experts, we want to make sure that people are prepared and they know what they're doing, and they have resources along the way to help them if they have any questions. So in addition to application support, even while the group is filling out an application, they can go to an info session. They can talk one-on-one to a coach about things that they're doing or how to fill out certain aspects of their welcome plan. There's a number of resources that help to like tips and tricks. Like, if you've never helped to find housing in this way, there's guidance for that. There's also resources before and after to support in carrying out those sponsorship duties. I think somebody mentioned the great week, I think it was Salima mentioned the great work that Airbnb does. Through Welcome Corps, private sponsor groups have access to up to a month of free credit. It's difficult to find safe housing within the United States, especially if, say, you're helping to find safe housing that somebody's going to be able to live in for a period of time, so they don't have to move again rather immediately after getting to the country, that will be affordable as well as safe and in a good location. So with that, recognizing that's a challenge for anyone in the United States right now, there's different resources, including that you can get credits up to a month as you help to find more secure housing. There's also, and very critically, connection to a private sponsor organization. You might hear this referenced in other ways, called a PSO. That organization helps us act as a guide throughout 4 questions that may come up, and just to help a general best practice with the group as they're carrying out their sponsorship services. And then at the same time that the private sponsor group and the community members have resources to support them, there's also supports for the refugee newcomer and families as well. Most importantly, they get this super packed, super prepared private sponsor group that is dedicated towards helping them throughout their 90-day period. There's also cultural orientation materials drawing on great work that different arms of the State Department are doing via CORE. It's important to note that these newcomers are eligible for OR benefits and services, just as others with refugee status are. There's a number of resources that have really been tailored, and again, building on best practices from programs before, both towards the refugee newcomer as well as the community group. There's a step-by-step guide that basically has weekly basis of like things that need to happen during that initial 90 days. There's also a monitored concerns phone line and email address to which refugees have direct access to. So recognizing that we want to make sure that there's space for people to voice any questions or concerns along the way, not only to the group and the program, but also just individually if situations like that arise and people need space to do that. So there's 2 main parts of the program. You may have heard this as phase 1 or phase 2. It's better, I think, to think about it as matching and naming. So currently, Welcome Corps private sponsors can assist refugees who have already been referred to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. So this is a part of the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. So what that means is that that group of 5 signs up, fills out their application, they're approved. They're then matched with a refugee newcomer who's been admitted to the program. And also, as a part of this, a cool innovation is that the refugee opts in to that wanting to be welcomed in this way. And then they're matched with a private sponsor organization, and then the process starts in terms of travel and logistics for the refugee newcomer to come. And later on this year, there's going to be another part of the program that will span, that will allow that same community group to name or identify a specific refugee individual or family overseas who they wish to sponsor. So the eligibility criteria for this is still being determined and finalized. However, we expect to soon, within the coming months, to be able to share more information about that. And what that will mean is that, again, depending on the final policy determination for that and relevant criteria, that group will be able to name someone that meets refugee status under US law, and then that person will come over, and that could open up the opportunity for that individual to be resettled who may not be eligible to come to the United States in another way. And just to give examples, something that this could be, and again, waiting on final determination, is that, say, a group of veterans in the US who has someone that they served alongside with in another place, they would be able to form a group, do everything that we just described, and say, I want to sponsor that person if they meet refugee status. We also see this could help with families that may fall outside of family reunification eligibility. So now going to the Welcome Corps on Campus. So that was the larger, broader program. There's also Welcome Corps on Campus, which same model, but leverages the strengths and unique opportunities based on the campus. And so a couple of key distinctions is that to help mirror the experience through university, the private sponsor group is required to sponsor for a period of 12 months, as well as in terms of funds raised, help to secure full tuition for year one, working with, and we'll talk about different opportunities, the institution themselves, as well as a recommendation of approximately $15,000 for living expenses. But I should note that that's also in-kind contributions are qualified. So like if housing was provided and arranged on campus, that would count towards that total. But really the aim is here is that in addition to everything described so far, that refugee students who are eligible to be involved in the program are supported comprehensively over their first year. So why is this cool? In addition to everything described so far, is that students are on track to become legal permanent residents through this program. It's a new higher education pathway specifically geared towards refugee students. Historically, sometimes it's been a little more difficult because to apply for certain academic opportunities for immigration, you had to be able to prove that you would go back to your country. Refugee students are obviously coming to the United States under extraordinary circumstances, and this would allow them to come. This is open to 2- and 4-year institutions. Just want to underscore this. This is like public, private, any institution that wants to get involved across the US can get involved. And those students typically have to be between 18 and 24 years old. Single, so this one that won't be supporting refugee families that come through this, but we really focus on individual students. And those students that are enrolling in associate degrees and bachelor's degree. I should note that for this, we're looking to recruit students through Kenya and Jordan for fall 2024 and 2025. For the wider program, I should note that in terms of populations being served right now, initially and currently we're serving those from different parts of sub-Saharan Africa, but over the next couple of weeks and months, that's expanding to be able to serve populations from around the world after that. And nope, I just double-sided print job. So that's, I'm gonna go back to go to the next one. Trying to be green.
Here, there you go.
But on the previous slide, and to lift up some organizations that were mentioned earlier. So this is also a public-private partnership in terms of the consortium that's supporting it. You'll recognize the names here, such Kim mentioned, ECAR. There's also the Institute of International Education, the National Association of System Heads, the President's Alliance on Higher Education Immigration, and World University Services Canada. That consortium together is helping to carry out and lead this work. And then before switching to open up the conversation, just want to note there's another program that isn't yet announced, but it will be focused and very relevant for today's conversation as well on helping to enable labor-related sponsorship opportunities. So don't have as much information today, but just want to lift that up, that encourage you to sign up for email updates on welcomecorps.org, because there will be opportunities where we'll be working with employers to think about that interesting nexus and how sponsorship might be had. Same model again, with the community being at the center, but working closely with employers to help see what opportunities are there.
Good. Well, thank you, Lucretia and Andre. Before we go on to questions, Colleen, do you want to add something from the State Department side to what Lucretia spoke about?
Sure, and just from the Department of State's perspective on just the launch of Welcome Corps, the two main goals of the program are to expand existing refugee resettlement capacity and infrastructure. I think some of us touched on the points where the previous administration was not as keen on refugee resettlement, and so it really, the capacity, the infrastructure was really reduced. And now the current administration is looking to very aggressively expand refugee resettlement, and it's been putting a big strain on the resettlement agencies. And so the idea of Welcome Corps is really to help build that capacity, and also by involving everyday American citizens, the hope is to make the program, as it had been in the past, nonpartisan. It's become a little bit more partisan, and just to involve everyday Americans to broaden and deepen public awareness and support for the program. And just quickly, Welcome Corps on campus, I would just want to mention, it really offers such a unique opportunity for refugee students as well as universities. The vast majority of refugees that come to the US, and this is a positive about the US refugee admissions program, is they are the most vulnerable of vulnerable refugees, which it should be, but sometimes refugees who are a little bit more resourceful and maybe less vulnerable don't necessarily have that opportunity. I think Michelle had mentioned literally 1% or less of refugees get the opportunity for refugee resettlement. And so, also, when refugees do come to the US, there's such an emphasis on early self-sufficiency that many refugees who aspire to further their education just really don't have the practical opportunity to do so. So the beauty about Welcome Corps on campus is that because it's a full year sponsorship, the refugee is initially, so the first initial phase of the program is refugees will be, participating universities and on-campus sponsors will be matched with refugees that have been identified as qualifying for the program. Eventually, we're going to actually have an identification component where participating universities and sponsor groups can actually name a refugee they want to sponsor. But I've lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. But it really gives a soft landing for that refugee student who for the first year of the program just doesn't, they don't have to worry about, providing for themselves. And it's just a great opportunity for them to further their education.
If I could add just a couple more things, recognizing that was a deep dive and rather quick run through of information. So just to emphasize everything that Colleen just said, and through the Welcome Corps on campus, part of the program especially, it's really aimed at going that one step further with the context of a university environment, of drawing on the best of the best within campus. So a private sponsor group for the Welcome Corps on campus is encouraged to show the diversity that's available on campus. So it would involve students, it would involve faculty, all the administrative staff, other staff, as well as community members. So just to emphasize that there's really the opportunity to dig even further, to dig into the magic of what's possible on a university campus for the benefit. And because there's so many employers as well as other organizations in the audience, I want to take just one step back before opening that through this program, I think it's helpful to think of it as a platform. What's possible is that community members get involved, but it goes beyond that group of 5+ people. It's really begging the question for all of us at large, no matter where we're coming from, no matter what we do on a daily basis, of how do you want to get involved in refugee resettlement? If you're an employer, how do you want to help support refugees and newcomers that are coming to your community. If you're a chamber of commerce, if you're a community organization, if you're a diaspora leader, it's really opens that in a new way that hasn't been possible for a while.
Yeah, and before turning it to questions, I think Andre, when you were talking about STEM education, you used the word intentional, as did Lucretia. And I think both of these, that this is where they can converge, sort of the intentionality of developing our workforce, as well as the intentionality of not just wanting to do good by refugees, but figuring out plans and ways to do it, and then providing the tools while building on community support. So I think it really is just such an opportunity. But now, questions. Start with Salima.
Okay. Thanks so much. This was really great information. I just had one question. How are people learning about this program? Like, what are some steps that you're doing for outreach to inform the public? We in the refugee community know about it and we're so happy about it, but how can we get people on board?
Great question. So in a number of different ways, but also open to any ideas anyone in the audience has, like how we can get it out more. There's always the room for more. To note, so far we've received applications from, I think, 29 states. So growing, and that is really positive that it's all over both coasts, Midwest, Deep South, West, Southwest. That's really encouraging. But we're pursuing a number of different approaches. One, welcomecorps.org. I should have said it out loud. Corps spelled with an S, Peace Corps S there. But also doing direct outreach, particularly to community leaders in a number of ways, but then really looking at various networks and scalable opportunities to get the word out. We're also building up our arm on social. We've got accounts started, but also looking to expand that, and then pursuing a number of event opportunities, such as like the Little Mall Tour that's going around the United States right now. There's a number of community sponsorship groups that are taking part in that, where they're sponsoring the US to like uplift and show the personal experience.
Reaching out to a lot of the tech companies, and I'm sure that might already be in place, but I know they have a lot of inclusion and like social advocacy programs right now. So that would be a really great hub, and they could share it with all their staff and employees.
I'm remiss to say that our partner Welcome.us is helping to really get the word out as well. They have a really unique coalition of employers through the Welcome.us CEO Council, and so we're working closely with them, building on that, but also inviting others to get involved as well.
Lisa? Okay.
I'm sorry. Do you have any information on how popular this program is with veteran groups?
That's a very good question. So anecdotally, yes, we have heard that currently there's not a mechanism, what we're calling affinity criteria, which we will eventually sort of launch, where private sponsors will be able to sort of interest groups, affinity groups can name refugees, or they can be matched with refugees. For instance, veterans who would like to sponsor a special immigrant, visa family, or LGBTQ groups who would like to support an LGBTQ refugee. So we have anecdotal, but right now we haven't really created that mechanism for preference.
It's important to note that, again, final eligibility to announce soon, but through the naming part of the program, that would be possible, where you would be able to name an individual that you share an affinity with, or not, to support through that part of the program.
Hi, I'm Julia Pfaff. I work at Into Mason with multilingual, multi-educationally cultural students. One of my questions is about the Welcome Campus program. You say that the campus groups or the campuses have to come up with 1 year. It can be in kind and money to support a refugee student through this program. What happens in year 2? Is the assumption that they are able to apply for FAFSA and they're able to get money that way through financial aid, or what happens in year two? Because I'm dealing with international students all the time, and a lot of them do come here making lots and lots of financial sacrifices, and then tuition goes up, housing costs go up, and then they're really, really struggling.
So Colleen and I both will jump in on this question. It's obviously one of the most pressing when considering how to get involved. So it's, we wanted to ensure that there is a student coming in for the program is supported adequately, but also wanted to make sure that there's not a barrier, it's not too overwhelming for groups to get involved. Say, taking on all 4 years as an initial ask is a lot. It's a lot for families across the US who are considering how they support their children. So we wanted to find a good balance there. I would say that to meet that, there's a number of ways, so both financial as well as in kind. And so in many cases, I think possible, but exploring different opportunities about how to do this with university leadership of like, how could tuition be covered? Are there programs or opportunities that might be available, working with leadership about how that could be covered? I mean, not out, directly out of the pockets of the private sponsor group. And that's what, brings a wealth of opportunities and possibilities in working with, say, that diversity across campus. And then again, like in kind through housing or otherwise. I should also note that there's some interesting things that are at work at large. Say in Virginia, refugee students now qualify for in-state tuition. That may differ state by state, just happened, which is like, awesome. But also all refugee students are eligible for Pell Grants. There's also, with this program, students will be, be able to have work authorization while they're here. And so there are a number of things that are helpful that have already happened or have just recently happened that contribute to making that support, meeting that support as part of the group's requirements a lot easier. Colleen, turning like how we're thinking about it over the arc of the student's journey.
Yeah, and Lou has pretty much covered most points, but part of the role of the private sponsor group is, in addition to supporting the refugee student for that first year, they have to come up with a pretty comprehensive transition plan outside of that 1 year, whether it be through helping the refugee, apply for scholarships or aid, or finding a job, that, really that transition plan is really important. And also there is some hope that some universities, at least, and there's been a pretty good amount of university interest, but there is some hope that some universities that have the resources can provide tuition and possibly room and board beyond that first year. And there's just to emphasize, the university doesn't necessarily have to provide any financial support. So if you have a private sponsor group on campus that is able to raise the funds for the tuition as well as room and board for the year, the only requirement is a commitment letter from the university that they agree to admit a refugee student to participate in the program. Of course, we hope that universities will also be able to, provide financially as well.
And I'll just add, the IIR has been in business for 10 years now, and we were actually founded by a refugee. But I have never had a foreign-born graduate research assistant who has disappointed me. I mean, they come, they do fantastic work, and so that is also kind of a sustainability process. I embarrass Michelle once in a while with my forthrightness, but it happens. Other questions?
Hi, I'm Alexia Ferguson. I'm a graduate student here on campus, and I work with contemporary student services. I'm still trying to formulate the question I have, but I think it's really just a clarification of the campus part of it. So are these private sponsorships taking on the role of essentially a parent sending a student off to college and providing those resources? And what is that relationship going to be like on campus to make that make sure students aren't falling through the cracks. Somebody else said we already have international students, and in my experience, there's a lot of barriers that are already here. So how will that be different with these private sponsorships?
Well, I know we're close to time, but just say this is all about empowerment. So this is really about helping to set up that refugee student or refugee comer if it's through the program to be success. Who better than those living around you, your neighbors around you, your fellow students around you, and our faculty to help show you the ropes, to give you that strong start when you're here. They're right there alongside you. So that's the intention of the program, is to really help give them a start and help make sure they have access to services and opportunities, to go from there as is best for their journey.
Good. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank our panelists, thank the audience, and again, we have intentionally set aside 15 minutes to the next session. So if you want to follow up on conversations, now would be the time. But thank you.